don't know how exactly, because it almost feels like no matter what we say to our children, that the messages that come through in media, from the perfect bikini model to the rock star being the ultimate. I mean, you can't just play guitar and be good at it, right? You have to be the rock star that makes it. You can't just, look cute in your little swimsuit. You have to be the bikini model that walks the runway. The images we have in our media seem to be counterproductive to anything that parents feel like they can do to help their kids. How do we teach them a balance?
Great question. Well, as in everything, we
Yeah.
need to model for them what we expect of them, right? So when we talk about our work, we need to talk about how we strive not for perfection, but for excellence. And how I define excellence is using every last ounce of the ability and the gifts that God gave us to manifest them wherever we can. Perfection is really an illusory concept. At least this side of heaven, we're never going to be perfect. And so we need to tell our children that we make mistakes, that we're imperfect, but we're still tremendously valuable both to God and to our fellow man, and that that's good enough. We need to love our spouses in ways where we honor our spouses' imperfection, love their excellence, and striving for excellence, but we understand our limits, and yet we deeply love each other. And then if we can model that for our children, they can start to see it for themselves that they don't have to be perfect.
You bring up a great point, Dr. Paterno. I'm so glad you did bring it up, because I think too many parents spend too much time almost obsessing about their child. They're getting them to soccer practice, getting them on the National Honor Society rules, getting them into the perfect college. And it can really burden a marriage, and not just relationship with the spouse, but also the relationship with the child ultimately, if there's just too much pressure. But then again, you look out there and it's a world of slackers. I look at this generation and I think, holy cow, we're so in trouble. So,
Right.
so how is it then that we balance that? How do we say to our kids, look, we don't want you to be perfect, but we want you to do really well. And at the same time, maintain that relationship that is so essential, really, to raising up a well-adjusted child.
No, I totally agree with you. And one of the things I focus on in my work is I work with kids on both ends of the spectrum. I have kids who have lazy butt disorder where we need to be pushing them.
Yeah.
They're not striving for excellence and they need to get a little dose of perfection in their system. And then the kids who are more type A, who already have an intrinsic sense of I'm striving for perfection and I can't reach it and I can't reach it. And those kids are usually highly anxious. And those are the kids we need to calm down and kind of put the brakes on and tell them, you're doing enough. We don't expect perfection out of you. We expect excellence. And you're already there. They're already doing what they need to be doing, and so we sometimes have to push them, to stop them, almost put reins on them, to get them to stop trying to achieve this illusory goal of perfection. Now, I'm not talking about perfection in certain tasks. For example, my daughter's a gymnast, and every gymnast has a fantasy of getting a 10.0, right? The Nadia Comaneci,
Sure.
syndrome. And that's okay. They should strive for excellence and perfection with certain tasks. Engineers strive for perfection on certain tasks. But the idea that they can be perfect in the biggest things in life, like beauty, like money, like college, it's just a fantasy. And it's okay to fantasize about those things. But we really have to focus on what's most important. And that's what we wrote about in our book is those virtues, being an honorable person, being a loving person, being a giving person,
Mhm.
being a humble person. And I think if you focus on those things, then people can give up that fantasy of the illusory perfection of our human being.
Yeah, because some of these things are very delicate. I feel like in certain areas, my parents didn't push me hard enough, and I wish they'd pushed me harder. I have a colleague who was just talking to me recently about saying that he wished that his parents had pushed him harder. I think that it's hard to know as parents, where is that space where you do need to say to your kids, "Hey, I believe that you could be that star gymnast," for example, with your daughter. But that doesn't mean that that's my personal goal for you, or that is the only way you can find success in your sport. Talk to
Right.
us a little bit about the minutia here, Dr. Paterno.
Well, one of the things we need to do is to find out what our children's gifts are. My daughter probably won't be Nadia Comaneci. She's a good gymnast, but we don't expect her to get a full scholarship or to be in the
But I
Olympics.
mean,
If that happens,
but hang on. Let me ask you: if you
yeah,
tell her that, I mean, I don't know. As a child, I think that would have diminished my confidence if my parents said, "Hey, we don't think you're going to be Nadia Comaneci." I mean,
no, I wouldn't say that to her.
okay.
I
So that's what you're saying to
privately,
us.
yeah, privately, I would think that, okay, if she doesn't make a certain threshold or get to a certain achievement level, that's fine with us.
Yeah.
We're not going to be disappointed. And anytime that but what we really talk to her about, and my other children as well, is striving to use the best of what you have. It's cliche. We don't care what grades you get as long as you try your hardest. But some kids, they absolutely better be getting straight A's because they're able to, and anything less than that would really be inappropriate. And there are other children where getting B's and C's is actually pretty good. And we need to honor them for their really hard work and striving to wring out of them the best that they can be. And I think really understanding over time your children's gifts and abilities are, and sometimes that means you need to test them. Sometimes that means you really need to talk to their teachers. Sometimes you really need to assess if you're homeschooling, what are they capable of,
Hmm.
and what are they not capable of, and accepting those limitations, not necessarily to kind of squash their fantasies or their desires or their
Hmm.
striving for excellence, but your own private goals for them, I think, can be altered.
Let's talk turkey for a second, Dr. Paterno. I want to know ages because for me, the things that it looks like my children might have talent or specific interest in at a certain age, they really begin to change. And I notice about a certain age, I think, that this is okay. Now, these are really, their skills are really starting to manifest themselves.
Mhm.
And they're maybe the places where they're not as talented, those things are starting to become more evident to me as well. Talk to us a little bit about that lifespan development,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
every year makes so much difference with children. And what year do we say, okay, this is your skill assessment, this is where I'm going to help push you, and these are the things I'm just going to kind of let go of?
Right. It's so ironic that you're talking about that because we're having a conversation about that very thing with my son who loves baseball. And just last year, he's got some raw ability,
Hmm.
but he's kind of got his head in the clouds and he's not paying attention as well as he could. And he just doesn't seem as motivated to use those gifts and abilities in a kind of passionate way. And
Right.
it was driving me crazy, as a former baseball player, knowing that if you try really hard and you listen to the coach, you can really be excellent. And he just wasn't there. And just recently, it kind of naturally hit him that he wants to do better and he's self motivated. He wants to go to practice now. It's amazing. So, and he just turned 9. And we also noticed that with my daughters, whether it came to dancing or gymnastics, that it was about that third or fourth grade level where they have the cognitive abilities to focus and really hone their passion and see into the future that what they could do over the long haul could be something great, in addition to their bodies kind of catching up to their brains and vice versa. So I think that's the period, at least kind of that general area, where kids really can start to focus on what they're really good at and maybe start to get rid of a couple things that they're only just kind of so at. And so they can focus on one or two things.
Only 1 minute remaining, Dr. Paterno, but what's the most important thing, if you had to boil it all down, the most important thing that parents can do to maintain that relationship, which matters more than any of the encouraging, any of the discipline, any of the pushing, prodding, pulling back? That relationship, parent to child, matters more than anything else, and parent to parent, frankly, as well. What's the one thing parents can do to really hone that?
I think it's the two-sided coin. I tell my kids two different things. Number one, I love you no matter what, no matter whether you're Nadia Comaneci or you fall down every time. And number two, I expect great things of you. I expect you to take God's gifts and use them 100%. I use that parable of the 10 talents and to use everything that you've been given to the greatest of your ability. And that if you do that, my son or my daughter, I'm incredibly proud of you, but I'm going to love you no matter what. And
That's
it's we
awesome.
say the same thing with our spouses.
Yeah, exactly. Dr. Dathan Paterno, thank you so much for being on Smart Life with us again today.